Welcome in to another edition of SEC Football and Beyond. This, the Tuesday, May 18th edition, and it's always a good time of year. Not good weather where we are, where I am in Baton Rouge. It is flooding going around the city here. A little soggy, no flooding in my neighborhood, but feel bad for the neighbors there. As I welcome in my partner, Neil McCready. May's I always thought May was a great time of year because it was, I don't know, Mother's Day. It was, weather's usually nice, still before the heat in the South. And graduation time's always neat. I remember my graduation time, and of course, Neil's got dealt with some graduation this past weekend, so congratulations to the graduates. And always thought it was a great time, a time of transition from junior high to high school. I've got a grandniece that is doing that, and then the one's going from high school to college. Neil, how was graduation in the McCready household this past weekend?
Well, graduation is Friday. They had the
okay.
thing at the church, and then Caroline has been our middle child who graduates on Friday, has been incredibly active in dance since as long as I can remember. I mean, back when we lived in Spanish Fort, we've been here 13 years, and she was in dance before we got to Oxford. Her final recital was Sunday afternoon at the Ford Center on the Ole Miss campus. So it was kind of bittersweet, and kind of to it. It was kind of hard to imagine her life without dance in it. She's the student body president at Oxford High School, so she's got a speech to deliver on Friday. So the graduation portion of it is not, I don't know, it's because she's not our first, and I guess she's not our last. I don't think we're all super emotional about her graduating high school. I mean, we've known she would graduate high school, and frankly, she basically graduated in December. She had one class this past semester, so there's been, and it hasn't been like, a wild rush to the graduation finish line. She was way ahead. But it's different. Yeah, for sure. And then Carson, our youngest, is finishing up middle school this week. He goes to high school next week. And so he's in the middle of Oxford High School soccer tryouts right now, which is nerve-wracking as hell, if we're just being completely honest. And you're right about the transition. I don't know who the transition's harder on, the kids or the parents. I think it's a little harder on the parents because the kids get to do it. But it's a different time. It'll certainly be a different time in our household in August because Caroline's going off to college, and Carson will be in high school, and it'll just be the three of us here instead of it being the five of us here like it is right now, because Campbell's home from college for another few weeks and everybody's home. It's kind of weird when no one's here, but I suspect 4 years from now, God willing, I'm still around, and
let's hope so.
I suspect when Carson's getting ready to leave, and it's the true empty nest thing, it's going to be like, wow, this is different. But I don't know. I rambled through that answer. It's been on my mind a lot. Today we're more focused on the soccer tryout than we are the graduation. I'm sure Friday the watching her give her speech and stuff like that will be. I'm sure that will be kind of emotional. So yeah.
Well, for many of you out there, I know a lot of you may have a son or daughter that's graduating this weekend or maybe last weekend or wherever the dates are. Congratulations to them, and congratulations to you, because it is as a parent, I know what sacrifices, and it makes, so it's a congratulations time. And if it's a sad, a melancholy time, we certainly thinking of you this time. If it's a great time, and man, I can't wait to get them out of the house, then congratulations. Whatever the case may be for you out there, and it's probably a little bit of both, all of the above. Congratulations. A reminder, we've got Blake and Sammy and Michael and Jeff have already chimed in. Good morning, gentlemen and ladies out there. We encourage the ladies to check in too. You can join us in the chat room, and certainly if you're watching this live on Twitch TV, on YouTube, Facebook, click the little heart button if you're watching us on Twitch and follow us there. Subscribe to our channel. Great way of supporting what we do. And if you're an Amazon Prime member, it's free in there. If you want to become involved, it's great. We got a number of things. We're going to start. We're in that period where there's not a lot of there. I think there is a lot of news going on, but it's not a lot of earth-shattering news, and don't know how much of it is overly interesting to you. But for those of you that really get into the minutia, we'll talk about some of it. But over at LandryFootball.com, we always get into the minutia. We get into everything that's going on. So mini camps in the NFL, who's doing what, how they're lining up, folks. We're going to talk a little bit about Najee Harris and Kadarius Toney a little bit. And I've got that in my notebook, how they're being utilized, but got some notes from Jacksonville on how they're using Travis Etienne, the Dolphins offense, a little bit of the changes and how that's looking, Carson Wentz and how he's looking in Indianapolis. Got a really impressive receiver that spurring the SEC that's at Maryland that jumps off on tape, spring practice tape I've been looking for. Arizona State has another good young quarterback behind Jaden Samuel. So we get into the entire college football, the entire NFL scene. So check it all out at LandryFootball.com. But Neil, I did want to talk a little bit, and I don't know where to start, but I will start on something that we talked about that I mentioned Friday. That Saturday was going to be an announcement. There was going to be a announcement by Katron Evans, the defensive tackle, 6'4", 320, that was down to Florida, Arizona State, and Jackson State. Now, he had committed to Tennessee, and then basically he's backed out of that. So from this past year. And I said I get he's at Jackson State's in his final three, but I would fall off my chair if he ended up going to Jackson State. I had a little back injury because I did fall out of my chair because he absolutely selected Jackson State on Saturday. So interesting move there. The young man is a big load. Got to find out a little bit more of the backstory from my Florida folks, the Florida staff and Arizona State staff. But I do believe that they were interested, made an offer. So good get. Deion has had, about four of those guys that were former four-star guys. And in the transfer world, and this is kind of a transfer, Neil. It's not an official transfer, but it kind of is. I think you're going to see Deion invoke a lot of, pressure to get those guys in, and he's created let's just call it a social media, his own, with Barstool Sports and his contract. He's making more money from Barstool than he is from Jackson State. He's selling that end of it. So I'm curious to see where it goes with them. But Katron Evans, Jackson State, throwback from the old days when they were getting good players there.
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting. The Deion Sanders experiment, we don't know yet because of COVID. They played in the spring and not the fall. We don't know what it looks like in a traditional setting. He is selling his celebrity. He is selling the Barstool thing, the exposure that he gets as a part of that celebrity to kids. There's kind of a movement among African-American kids to go to historically black colleges and universities right now. I'm interested to see, and obviously living in this state, I'm interested to see how he's able to recruit high school kids. And it's kind of a little bit of a perfect storm of an opportunity for him because two things are happening. Lane Kiffin's at Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin's trying to recruit regionally and nationally. He's not locked in on Mississippi kids. Mike Leach is at Mississippi State, and he's recruiting a certain type of kid, certainly on one side of the ball, and is not allowing himself to be, defined by geographic bounds. Now, Will Hall at Southern Miss is going to recruit the state really hard. Will Hall's going to have a lot of success recruiting Mississippi. But there's going to be players, especially in that Jackson metropolitan area, which is the biggest part of Mississippi. There are going to be players that are going to be left over and available for Deion. And then I think Deion's going to be a guy, Chris, who's going to have a lot of success in the transfer portal. Because I think that's going to be a lot of his, hey, it didn't work out for you at big school X. Come here for your second shot. I've got all these NFL contacts. You get the exposure, et cetera, et cetera. I think he's got a chance. Just it's his path to making them more than what they've ever been before is in my opinion, it's a pretty narrow road. But when you get players like this, it shows you that you sort of have a clue as to what you're doing.
Well, and of course, Deion is all about Deion. So Deion is absolutely trying to parlay this into something bigger and better and somewhere else. Whether how effective he can be at doing that is a big part of it. Getting good players, he understands that. I know that he tried to. How do I put it? He tried to promote himself or sell himself as a candidate for the Florida State job when he hired Mike Norvell, and it was never
No.
it was never true. But he tried to sell that, and his buddies at the NFL Network, kind of made it seem like it was real, and it was a joke. And I think he kind of got a feeling that no one's taking you seriously. So I think he feels like he's got and he's got the Jackson State job. If he's able to do a good job, then it'll be interesting to see who might be interested at a at a higher level, and maybe it's in an FCS level. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this plays out. Long way to go with that. Watching a little bit, and yeah, I have watched them a little bit. They've been okay. They haven't. I mean, I think they've been more of a show, than what I would call a fundamentally good team. I mean, I've seen them play a few games, and they're not all that impressive or organized. I don't know that outside of being, a recruiter, I don't know that there's much there. But we'll see, and certainly wish him well. And I know someone asked, does his going to Jackson State more about him as a player not being good enough? Well, I mean, Florida and Arizona State were interested. And again, I'll find out if maybe there was something down the end or something character grade wise. But Tennessee, a lot of people recruited him. So I would say that no, he was a kid that he was graded highly, and again could be misgraded. But if he was misgraded, it was misgraded by some, the Floridas and the Arizona States and some Tennessees of the world too. So we'll see how that plays out. Couple of notes there. The Troy punter, Jack Martin, who's transferred to Alabama, has got a really explosive leg. I know that's not a position that people get overly excited about. Boy, that is such a huge position. Good get for them. I was curious to see where he might end up. Staying State makes a lot of sense there. But
that's an area that Saban has gotten where they're very strong. Alabama's maybe even the best punting team in the league the last several years. Gotten better at kicking. There was a time when kicking was the Achilles heel for Nick Saban. He seems to have solved a lot of that.
Yeah, and you know what? The whole time that they struggled with kickers, the part was they didn't offer scholarships for a long time to a kicker, and then they did, and then that didn't work, and so I do think perfect way to go about it. If you're having a hard time evaluating kickers because those guys are like golfers, they just hit streaks where you just can't figure it out. Sometimes it's better maybe to let those guys go, and let them develop, and I think that may be the future for kickers at Alabama, kickers and punters. Just go ahead and just get a trend for a guy that's done it. And this guy, his hang time was deep into the 4.6, 4.75s that in an average at 46 yards a punt, 66 yards, can place it. So we'll see. The pressure of the moment. He's really an explosive leg. So good get for them. I'm working on. I've got to get Kentucky, Ole Miss, and South Carolina reports up on LandryFootball.com. Some of the spring notes. I'm working my way through it. I'm not, those are the SEC schools that I've got to get up. I have working obviously across the entire country doing all of them, but a couple of things that jumped out at me at Missouri. The Mookie Cooper kid, the redshirt freshman, is going to be something to watch this year. With Basilak back, that kid, the Cooper kid, is really explosive. He's 5'10-ish, about 190, 195, and he is really explosive. I put a note in the notebook about him. He's a kid that was at Ohio State behind all those good ones. He's a St. Louis kid. So something to keep an eye out for this year. And then good news for them on the recruiting trail over the weekend, getting the 4-star defensive lineman Marquise Gracial Good get for them. So I'm curious to see as I look at the East and know that Vanderbilt bad, Tennessee's bad in rebuilding, South Carolina's bad. You've got three really bad programs. You're starting to look and say Missouri just, if anything, looks like plugged into the fourth spot. I don't know that's where they're finished this year, but that's kind of where I see them, at least right now. That with Kentucky with being having a little bit more stability, it'll be interesting to see what Eli and this offense as he gets more playmakers like this Cooper kid. This really helps them and gives them some playmaking ability.
What do you think he wants that offense to look like when he gets his players? I mean, obviously what they did last year was just kind of they used what they had. But what do you think they'll when he gets his guys? What does he want it to look like?
Play a lot of up tempo, a lot of RPO stuff. A lot of quick game, a lot of get the running game going with tempo, keep you off balance there. That's what he wants to do. I think he sees that as we can get some playmakers here. We may not be able to recruit at the elite level, but we've got to recruit some defensive linemen. We've got to recruit some big guys, of course, but we're going to try to beat you with some tempo and kind of hurt you offensively. So that's kind of what I see. I mean, I think in terms of a model, if I were going to look schematically of some of what they would like to do, if I were going to make a comparison, would probably be Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they got to get better defensive players. Missouri's got to get better defensive players, but their calling card's going to be their offense.
Let's talk Missouri's schedule real quick. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Mm-hmm. They open with Central Michigan at home on September the 4th. It should be a win, I would think. They go to Kentucky, a big game right off the bat, to Kentucky on September the 11th. They get Southeast Missouri State at home on September the 18th. They go to Boston College on the 25th. Then in October, they open October with Tennessee at home, North Texas at home, before they get Texas A&M to finish a 3-game homestand. That game is October the 16th. Then they get an open date at Vanderbilt, at Georgia to open November, South Carolina at home, Florida at home, at Arkansas. All right, so I'm going to give you. I always do like ceiling and floor. Tell me whether I'm crazy.
Yeah, I need to kind of hear them again because I didn't write them down, but I'll go. Let's go ahead and I'll see.
Central Michigan at home, that's a win. At Kentucky, winnable. It's a toss. Southeast Missouri at home's a win. So it's 2 wins and a toss. At Boston College, I know nothing about Boston College. You'll have to fill me in there.
I think they've got a good shot there, but BC's that's not easy. That's a good one. A little more little less. I would put Kentucky as a little bit tougher game, but I think that's winnable.
Okay, Tennessee at home, I think very winnable for Missouri on October the 2nd. North Texas at home on October the 9th. That's very winnable for Missouri. So at this point, let's just split Kentucky and Boston College here. At this point, you're 5-1 out of the gate. 1, 2, 3, 4-1. 4-1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. No, 5-1. You're 5-1 out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. 5-1. That's good scheduling. That's due to the schedule.
Then you get Texas A&M at home. That's a loss. 5-2. You get a weekend off to kind of heal your wounds a little bit. Then you go to Vanderbilt October the 30th. A very winnable game for Missouri. In fact, I'll call it a win. You can tell me I'm an idiot in a minute. At 6-2, they go to Georgia to open the month of November. It's probably a loss. 6-3. South Carolina at home, very winnable game. 7-3. Florida at home, probably a loss. 7-4, and then they play Arkansas the day after Thanksgiving in Fayetteville. Certainly a very winnable game at the end of the season. I mean, it's not out of the realm that Missouri's an 8-4 football team.
Yeah, if you look at it, let's say Arkansas, BC, swing games, and that's assuming you don't slip up against Tennessee or South Carolina. Yeah, that could be 8-7, certainly possible. I don't see the 4 losses are pretty solid to me. I mean, it's a pretty decent win if they're able to beat Kentucky, and there'll be circumstances that happen to cause that. But yeah, no, the difference there, right there, and it just goes to college football. You can go back over the years. It's recruiting and scheduling. You went over South Carolina's schedule last week, And I mean, now I don't think South Carolina's. I think Missouri's a little bit better, but South Carolina, talent-wise, not really good. But if you take South Carolina and you give them this schedule, you could see some wins. Trying to find 4 wins, 5 wins for South Carolina and get that schedule is. I mean, they could be pretty good and only get 4 or 5 wins. So you're right. I think that this is certainly bowl eligibility is what you want, and this is what you have to do. You have to build a program. You have to schedule it. You have to get some wins that are pretty easy, and don't screw up a Central Michigan. You said, or Central Missouri? I'm sorry, the first one.
Central Michigan.
Central Michigan is don't play around with that because that could surprise you. They're good enough to surprise you, but that's got to be a win. No, I think that's a good schedule to try to get things going. And I do think that there's enough there to get to make some strides. And it helps when again you got Vandy, Tennessee, South Carolina. You got Tennessee, South Carolina in a rebuild, and Vandy's just bad.
Yeah, I pulled up South Carolina's schedule again because I was curious. It's Eastern Illinois at home, at East Carolina, which can be a squirrely game. East Carolina can be decent.
Mm-hmm.
At Georgia, which is an L. Kentucky at home. A tough game for Carolina, I think.
That's a loss.
They get Troy at home. And frankly, you
don't want to play East Carolina and Troy. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to give them a win and hope.
Yeah. At Tennessee.
Yeah.
That's when Tennessee will circle. Vanderbilt at home. That's a win. At Texas A&M, brutal. Florida at home, brutal. At Missouri, home versus Auburn, home versus Clemson. Holy, that thing could go south.
Well, it will. And again, don't tell me, Missouri. Not okay. So say, well, Auburn. No, they're not beating Auburn, particularly after coming off of A&M, Florida.
No,
there's no way in hell. And in Missouri, no, they're gonna. On that last stretch you had, there's not a winnable game there. I think after Vandy, that's it.
Yeah,
so
again, they close with, wow, it's 5 straight weeks, no break. Mm-hmm. This is their close. At Texas A&M, I stand corrected. They're off the weekend of Halloween. At Texas A&M, open date, home versus Florida. At Missouri, home versus Auburn. Home versus Clemson.
Yeah. So you're talking about you're not in terms of a roster, and that's all I can go on right now. I can't tell you what's going to happen in a mid-October game when I don't know who's healthy and a lot of circumstances but that's 4 wins, best. I mean, they're having to pull up a big upset. Well, look, so if they beat Tennessee, that could be 5. That's what has to happen. Got to beat Vandy. Got to beat Eastern Illinois. And then East Carolina, Troy, you got to avoid an upset there. And I'm not sure that they're going 2-0 in those games. They have to go 4-0 against those 2, Eastern Illinois, Vandy. And then maybe beat a Tennessee because they get them before the gauntlet. And that's about it because they're going to end up losing 5-ish in a row.
They have one path to 6 and 6. One path only, and is this: Eastern Illinois, East Carolina, Kentucky, Troy, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. That's their path to 6 and 6. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
They're not beating Georgia, and then down the stretch, they're not beating A&M, Florida, Missouri, Auburn, or Clemson.
No, I mean, I don't see 6. I just don't see 6 at all.
So if you do ceilings and floors, when your ceiling is 6 and 6, oof.
I think the ceiling is 5. I don't think there's 6 wins. I mean, I don't know. I think 6 win is busting the ceiling. I think it's just busting the ceiling. I think it's that China orbiting thing, just hitting your ceiling and busting it wide open. I don't see it. I hope for them that they are, but I think this is going to be tough. And yeah, God bless them. You hear people ask us, can you win 8? It's like, do people even watch football? I mean, some of the things that they talk about coaches or teams or players, it's like, God, them you could tell them, man. So, but I think the East is. Look, we can talk about it. The league being so big, you can sometimes say that the league's pretty strong. They got this. The league's pretty weak. They got this. They got so many teams. You can sit there and say the weak. The East is very weak. I mean, you've got, and it's why it's because Kentucky's had stability and done a good job. Who they're competing against? South Carolina's through hard times, and that roster is bad looking. Vanderbilt's bad. Tennessee's rebuilding. Could that's another one. We'll get into them and look at that. But they're probably sitting there saying, what's Josh Heupel going to do? And we're going to have this offense, and we're going to score 45 points and beat more people than everybody's just kind of selling. But you got Vanderbilt, you got Tennessee, you've got South Carolina, that are really, struggling, and that helps makes Missouri a contender of in the top four, almost by default. I mean, if they don't finish in the top four, then shame on them. I mean, they've got a chance to finish fourth just by doing a pretty good job, and just by comparison, better team and an easier schedule. Those are two examples right there of why things are what they are. And let me just say this: I know this is not the way the fan looks at it. I don't look at how good a team is based on the record. I look at how good they are, and I have to look at the schedule and who they play. It's a big part of it, because you can have. I'll give you an example of a program that did a good job of building out of nothing. And these programs certainly have more going for it than Kansas State. But when Bill Snyder got there, he decided, look, I'm going to. Eastern Illinois. He had everybody. He had every direction in Illinois, and he built a program that way, and he got to bowl games. And he was able to sell that enough to where it became better and better and better. But you've got to schedule and see, where you are and build upon that, because to me, you can be pretty good, and you might be a team that wins 4 games. And you might be a better team than a team that wins 7. It just depends on who you are, and who the teams you beat. So that's how it plays out. It's going to be real interesting. Couple of notes from the NFL, Neil,
Okay.
that relates to some college players. Talking to Steeler friends and looking at, and I knew it would be this way. And if there's a player that just you take a hand in glove fit, is Najee Harris in the Steelers, because all the inside zone, the outside zone, the one back, power, all like the Alabama stuff. That's what the Steelers run. So when I asked, I said, "How do things go?" He says he was just smiling ear to ear, because all the stuff that he's running with us is all the stuff that he runs. I mean, the terminology, everything. So things are off to a really good start with him, and I would expect him to have an impact. That offensive line has to play better, but that's a really good fit. Also interesting.
I love Najee Harris. Just as an aside,
Yeah.
To me, he's a special back. I mean, he got overshadowed last year by the receivers and at times by his quarterback, and they were very good at offensive line. But Najee Harris was a monster, man.
Well, people was asking me prior to the draft, how is Kadarius Toney going to be utilized? And we talked about, it depends on where he goes, but I think a lot of people will have a different little role for him. But he is working. He worked certainly in their mini camp this past weekend. Out of the slot a lot, and I think that's where they're going to probably use it. They've got a lot of weapons there, so it's a lot of receiving weapons, and a lot of tight end, H back, F back. So they got a different looking type of guys. But Kadarius is working and doing really early, doing a lot of slot. I thought what's interesting too, as an aside to that, see where Urban Meyer is working Travis Etienne. He is lined up at receiver all the snaps in minicamp thus far. Now I know part of that is let's work him there. Let's kind of see how he does there. But they are thinking a lot of third down back receiver type. So a lot of what you do is you work outside of receiver, and and I've done that before, where you get guys really understanding the coverages a little bit better from that spot. You work it, and now you can, but they'll work him a lot out of the backfield. But he's done that a lot. So let's line him up wide and do things that he hasn't done and get him acclimated to that. So those are just some notes. Got tons more that I know we will let you go to LandryFootball.com because it may not be in your interest level of the schools and whatnot. But just to, always like to track how people in the limited time we can work on how they're using guys and how they see their roles are in the early stages of minicamp. Those are two SEC guys that I think are going to have an impact in both of their teams this year.
Were you interested to hear that Urban Meyer said that the guy that kind of got away from them was Kadarius Toney? He was the guy that they had targeted there, and then he was gone in the pick that they ultimately used to take Etienne.
Yeah, that's why they're using ATN that way. They see ATN as, we want to do the Kadarius Toney things we would have done with Kadarius. Yeah, I knew he's, for all the connections and all the reasons. That's what Urban likes. Urban likes those guys that can. I mean, a lot of guys like versatility, but he has used those guys. Whether it's Jordan Reed in the H-back stuff, or he's used, Percy Harvin, who's more the running back receiver. He likes the hybrid guys a lot because what he can do is he can put them formationally in different spots near the line of scrimmage, and he can kind of create some matchups and get some defensive run looks and be able to attack that with speed. He's still a big believer in the run game and the pass game off of it, and so that's the whole reason why he liked ATN. He thinks he can do the things that Kadarius can, probably not quite as well, but he sees that, or at least that's what he saw in what he's anticipating. But he wants to see a little bit more how much of that he can do with them versus how much we're going to have to leave him out of the backfield and use him as a pass receiver there. So,
if you're them, how do you handle Trevor Lawrence early in his career? You've seen quarterbacks that become Super Bowl quarterbacks, Troy Aikman, Peyton Manning come to mind, guys that they just threw them into the fire and said, good luck. And you've seen some guys where they kind of try to bring them along. Lawrence, obviously,
right,
huge skill set, very smart kid, a lot of charisma, all of those things, a lot of leadership. What do you do with him starting out?
Well, first of all, what they're doing in minicamp, no, that's not your question, is he's coming off the shoulder, and so they're kind of they got him on a pitch count, even though he's not the shoulder, but on working that because you still move it and all that. As he gets going, they're going to work him. I think they're going to work him as they can physically and as they can go full bore with him. I think the way you have to do it, in my mind, is you have to happen organically. In other words, that people will say, yeah, the plan is we're going to start the other guy for 3 games, and then game 4 he comes in. It doesn't work that way. I mean, you can have an idea of, we'd like to sit there and say, we need to get a guy ready. And what does getting him ready mean? There's a 3-step process in the classroom. You got to know not only the offense, know all the responsibilities, but you got to have a awareness from a coverage standpoint, from a front standpoint, set protections. You have to know it. Okay, so in the classroom is learning it. You got to know it. Okay, because you know it, can you utilize it? You might know stuff, but can you now use it? So then you've got to take it to the practice field. So do you take what you know, and then can you execute it in the practice field consistently enough and against certain looks? Do you have the recognition and all those things? Then when you do that, then you can go into the game. Because if you do it before then, here's what happens. Everything you teach goes to hell in a handbasket. Because what happens in the heat of the moment of the game, you revert back to whatever you do. It's just, you don't know it, you're not comfortable, so you just react. And if you're going to teach it properly, what you want to do is go through a sequential process to where when the pressure comes, they're reacting and knowing what to do and how and when to do it. I use a golf analogy. If you want to try to change something in your swing, it's best not to do it while you're in a round. Go to the range and learn how to do it the right way and get enough reps on the range to where you're doing it the right way. Otherwise, you're just going to repeat bad habits. And then the more bad habits you repeat in a throwing motion, in recognition, and all the, then you got to break those habits to begin to learn new ones. And it's a two-tone process. Sometimes it's better to have guys that know less but have an ability to learn so that you teach them from scratch. So how long does that take? Well, it depends. Depends on the guy. I mean, it might be week 1. It might be week 3. It might be, don't know. They've got someone they can play. Maybe not going to make a difference, but somebody that can line up. Has got some experience that can play there. But I don't know that it makes a whole lot of difference if it's week 1, week 5. I know fans that might want to go and buy tickets. Well, I want to see him play. Look, you got to do what you want to do. I know that, for example, when we had Steve McNair, one of the things we did, we had a veteran quarterback. We weren't going to start Steve, but that's different because Steve was really not ready. I think Trevor is more ready, so he could play sooner. But in the latter part of the season, in this case, by the time they get knocked out of the playoff race, which they will in Jacksonville, then by that time there will be enough work and enough practices for him to get it. That's the other thing. People will say things like, well, you got to get him. Well, there's a limit of what you can do in these off-season works right now. So it really takes you in-season practices it takes about 4 to 5 weeks of the regular season before you get enough practices that would equate to the old days in camp. So this is why, you gotta, things will change with players in any position, but certainly at the quarterback position. So I don't have a time frame, and I think it just depends on how quickly they are, or they may say, look, we'll have a reduced package and we'll work with them there, which is fine. But then with a reduced package, you limit what he can do and you limit the adjustments. And then people say, oh, man, he really struggled. He took a sack that, well, they didn't have all of it in, so they're limiting what they're asking him to do. So therefore, the more you limit, the easier you are to defend. So there's a pro and a con to that. But I have no doubt this guy has all the tangibles and intangibles to be really good. And the key is going to be whether Urban can build a culture and build a roster that facilitate, what this guy can be. Because we've seen it before with teams have good quarterbacks be ruined. And I think that is as much to do with the success of a player as the talent and the intangibles of the player himself.
Yeah, I agree. Jacksonville's one of the real interesting stories in the league, in a league full of interesting stories. Jacksonville's way up there because this is a leap for Urban Meyer to the NFL from the Fox studios. I mean, I know he had real success at Utah and Florida and Ohio State. Was great as a TV guy, but jumping into the NFL and today's NFL, the way that the NFL is as specialized as it appears to be, is going to be a challenge for Urban Meyer. I'm really interested in it. And then I don't know what it is about Lawrence because he's a great quarterback. If you told me I could bet on any of them having like major success, I don't know that he would be the one that I would immediately bet on. I don't know. They're
quarterbacks with better situations.
Yeah,
for sure. Probably where you're going with it.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. I don't know. I don't get the warm fuzzies about Urban Meyer in Jacksonville, and maybe I'm completely off base, and it won't be the first time, and it probably won't be the last time, but I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, Chris. I don't get a great feeling about it.
Yeah, no,
and it's not the Tebow thing. Like I got a lot of people making a big deal out of the Tebow thing. I'm like, whatever. I mean, he's coming into if he does make their team, he's making their team as a backup tight end / H-back, whatever. That's fine. Okay. I mean, I know he's a big name and a personality and all that stuff, but the Tebow thing to me is not that big of a deal. And if you told me that the Tebow thing is just to take a little bit of the early media heat off of Lawrence, I'd buy it. But it's just something about Urban Meyer in Jacksonville that makes me go, I don't know.
Well, I think the Tebow situation has been asked a bunch of me, and I'll address it here because I don't think I've actually addressed this, but I did do a podcast last week, the Landry Football Podcast, on it, and well, it's one of the topics I went into, and so the whole process started with Tim wanting another chance. Here's the thing that I haven't heard really many people bring out, but Tim is 3 games away from being fully vested in the NFL pension, meaning you're fully vested if you're on the active roster or you're on IR or PUP for 3 games in a year. It's a vested season. So he's got one more season of that. Now, we're not talking about millions of dollars or anything once you get that, but it is something, and it is an addition to whatever it is somebody like him is going to make. And there's a lot of other benefits, medical and otherwise, that come along with it. So it is important. I think that he has embraced the idea that I'll do whatever. I will play tight end. I believe in it and all that. And he's got the one guy that believes in him where others around the league will not. He's not getting this opportunity if it's not Urban Meyer in Jacksonville, if it's somebody else in Jacksonville. It's pure and simple. It's pretty obvious with that. Landry is not saying that Urban signed him so he can, and we'll put him on the roster so that he can get his NFL pension. I'm not saying that. Can't happen that way. Can't, flop around and be, awful and make the team. But if he doesn't fall flat on his face, I do think, if he does make it, that's something that's going to benefit him. I think it's also something that the owner has bought into because he is such a guy that's popular. I mean, when politicians come to him and want him to speak because they know that he can bring in a whole, I think he believes that maybe in some way, shape, or form that Tim could be a part of, well, he's part of the Jacksonville community, but maybe part of the Jacksonville organization, even in an ambassadorial role, that's a part of it. And he hasn't made the team, and I don't know that, again, he's going to have to do enough to make it. But if he makes it, is he going to have the impact, big impact? No. But if he can be a third tight end and contribute on special teams and not, it's something, and it may be at this stage an indication of where Jacksonville's roster is. So they're not really good, whereas maybe 2 years from now, if you tried this, it just wouldn't work because there's not even a chance. So I think all of that's in play. What is amazing, though, is you've got, and again, I don't mean to be rude. So you got the fans that some that just think he's the greatest thing, and he brings all these intangibles, and he's going to lift up an organization. And then you got the others that think he's trash. It's just like amazing how polarizingly opposite, and neither one are right. The reality is he's just, hey, he's given a free shot. That's the way it happens in a lot of cases in this league. And I don't know that it's not the way I think people perceive it to be. He's not going to have an impact. He's not the worst thing ever. I mean, it's just one of those situations where it just kind of comes out the way it is. And I think it's going to play itself out.
Well, the media likes to compare him to Kaepernick. He's getting this opportunity that Kaepernick's not getting, and that kind of thing. And it's great fodder for talk radio and the TV talking head shows and stuff. At the end of the day, look, it's not even about case. Not to me that the comparison is not apt. It's a completely different deal. Tim Tebow makes no sense on any roster outside of Jacksonville, but in Jacksonville this year, as you try to kind of rebuild and etc. Tebow makes a little bit of sense. I mean, like you said, he can't flop around and be awful, but if he can play a little bit of a role, Tim Tebow sells tickets. Tim Tebow sells jerseys. Tim Tebow puts himself in a position where, let's say he just survived one season in Jacksonville, where, like you said, he could take an ambassadorial role moving forward at a franchise that has not been embraced locally going into this before this. I mean, this is the first time that really that entire city is since their heyday. This is the first time that they've kind of bought in. I mean, there was a period there where they couldn't sell tickets, they couldn't fill it up, they were blacked out in the local market because they sold so few tickets, etc. Tim Tebow is as big a name in Jacksonville, Florida football as there is, and so putting him in a Jag uniform for a season or a part of a season, if you can pull it off, it makes sense at the box office.
What it does, it brings closure for Tim, and I think I think Urban understands that too. So by that is, he's done his baseball thing, he tried the quarterback thing, and this is it, and it brings some closure. And let me just say this for people who may not be aware of. This goes on a little bit more. This is just a much more of a bigger name guy. But I have, in the past, remember, when you got 90-man rosters, it's different than 53. In order to sign, for example, there's a kid I signed out of Penn State, a running back named Mike Archer, years ago. He was an undrafted free that I liked a lot. I wanted to sign him. And to be honest with you, the sweetener of the deal is I signed a defensive back on the team that I didn't want to sign. He wasn't going to embarrass us in camp, but I knew the guy had no real chance of making it, whereas I thought Mike did. I signed the defensive back to get Mike to come. Same agent, it happens. Okay, so that happens. And in order, you see it in recruiting. Sometimes you may offer the family member or teammate of a guy, and it may have been where it just happens. I also, a couple of times, worked out players that I knew they were done, but they, in their minds, they weren't done. And a couple of them were players I coached at LSU, and a couple of them were other players that I think people around them said, "Would you work him out?" And I knew what they meant is he needed to hear that it's time to move on, and so worked him out. And it was only one of those cases where I signed him. The other is that you go to lunch and you have a talk with them, and you basically, in a roundabout way, say it's time to move on to your life's work. They need to hear it, and they need to have closure. And sometimes, if you have enough background with the player or the agent or whatever, you can bring that closure to the player. And I think a lot of that goes on that people don't understand behind the scenes because they're not involved in it. They just see this guy's getting a free ride, and there are other guys that maybe deserve chances too, but those other guys don't have the background with Urban that this guy does, and so therefore there is a pull there. There is a bond there that means a little bit more. You wouldn't get Urban to admit all of this. I think Urban would be very surprised if Tim has a big impact on this team. But the upside, okay, what if he does? He makes a team. He's a little bit better than you hope, whatever. He gets his pension. Use that opportunity. If he doesn't, then he doesn't. But there's closure there. And for them, you just can't do that. In the times that I did it, nobody really understood what we were doing because it wasn't Tim Tebow. When you do it when you're Tim Tebow, and you do it in today's society, in today's world of social media, you better be prepared for the publicity you're going to get from it, positive or negative. But it is amazing now because it's now become a racial issue. It's become a religious issue. I mean, it is like it has taken on a life of its own. And I think it's the combination of the time of year, people looking for things to talk about. I guess the whole Aaron Rodgers being traded today is off the table for, kind of, they're a little bit tired of that. So this is a story that's going on and on and on. And hopefully, look, there's nothing I can do to advance it. That's what it is. He's not any better or any worse based upon whether you like him or don't like him. He is what he is, and that's that.
Podcast is brought to you by Blue Sky. Blue Sky believes in being fast, fresh, and friendly through the thoughtful layout and cleanliness of their stores. Blue Sky hopes to provide customers with fast and easy buying experience from services to products. Blue Sky plans to keep things fresh. They always provide the freshest flavors of the brand name products and the best services available. They even bring in some of the newest products in the market to their stores to provide an even better customer experience. A smile can say it all, and Blue Sky wants to show their customers that they care about them and their shopping experience. They'll always strive to improve their efforts to accomplish exactly that. So check out Blue Sky today at any one of their 48 store locations across the Southeast. And we're brought to you by Alpha Specialties, located at 1670 Highway 80 in Pearl, Mississippi. Alpha is your trailer-specific professional. If you want to haul it, they can call it. Alpha's the premium trailer dealership in Mississippi. They've got Load Trail. It's the premium brand trailer, the highest quality utility, equipment, dump, and gooseneck trailers being built today. Fully primed and powder-coated, Load Trail trailers come with an industry-leading 3-year warranty and 2 years of roadside assistance. Alpha Specialties also has Hallmark cargo trailers. It's one of the most quality cargo trailers on the market today, perfect for hauling goods to markets and shows, ATVs to deer camps, hauling race cars, and much more. Alpha can even work with third parties to have game day trailers and concession trailers built just to your specifications. And for podcast listeners, Alpha has spare tires and wheels starting at just $100, a full selection of trailer parts and accessories, hitches, winches, straps, and more. They also do all types of truck accessories, and listeners can get a 10% discount off of a yearly trailer service and inspection at Alpha's full service shop, one where they can repair all types of trailers, concession, horse, utility, enclosed, gooseneck, RV, and more. So give them a call at 601-932-9798 or check them out at alphaofms.com.
Couple of notes in the chat room. I'm going to ask you this one, and while you're thinking about it, I'll answer another one. So Blake asks, which team do you think will get the most dumpster fire memes this year? And so that's SEC teams. So which team do you? While you think about that, Sammy asks, has Missouri ever been a national presence in any sport? Basketball a while back, I think. Basketball under Norm Stewart was really good. There were a couple of teams that were favorite, like Final Four type teams in the Big 8, Big 12 days. Never quite got there, but they were really good. Look, in football, again, if you hit it right at the right time. Remember, they have been to 2 SEC championship games under Gary Pinkel. That's when you got Florida just messing around Georgia.
They were 1 win over Auburn from playing for the national title.
That's correct. Yeah, so they really struggled. The conference really struggled, and Missouri had a path, and they took advantage of it. So yeah, as I say, well, if Florida, Georgia not doing their job, somebody's got to win it, and Tennessee wasn't doing a very good job. Somebody's got to win it. So they got there as a result of the East being weak at the top, and they're doing a nice job. But Gary did a good job. Let me remind you, too, that prior to them coming into the SEC, that Missouri had a team, Missouri and Kansas, yes, Missouri and Kansas played a top 5 game in the Big 12. The year that LSU won the national title under Les Miles, when West Virginia, Rich Rodriguez's team lost to Pitt in the last game, and LSU got in and beat Ohio State. That Missouri-Kansas game, that was one of the biggest games of the year. And then you go back, Dan Devine was the coach at Missouri. It's really good. Don Farrell was a great coach. Yeah, they have been really good, but not, you can make the case they're not the real fit in the SEC. And geographically, they're not. They're there because of the TV market. We know all that. But it's a program that can be what Kentucky is. I think South Carolina has more resources and more of a fan base, but they're kind of lumped in with those. That's kind of what they are. So that's kind of the thoughts there. But team that would have the most dumpster fire memes in the SEC this year, what would that be?
Ooh.
I'm going to throw in, I think people are going to really start to hammer South Carolina because the record's going to be bad. People are just going to look at the record and they're going to say, well, but you start losing to all those games, to all those good teams. I don't know how many people are going to sit there and have sympathy for it. I think they'll get one. I think Vandy will get some.
The obvious candidate is Tennessee. Tennessee's got a chance to be, I think, a disaster. I'm pulling up their schedule as we speak. Tennessee football schedule 2021. Oh, they gave me the ball. I need to do the Vols. They gave me the Tennessee Titans. But Tennessee, if the Vols open up with the Falcons, they're in trouble. I'm just telling you. Let's see. Tennessee opens up on Thursday, September the 2nd with Bowling Green. 9 days later, they get Pitt at home. Then they get Tennessee Tech at home. Then they open SEC play September the 25th at Florida. They go at Missouri a week later. South Carolina at home on October the 9th. Ole Miss at home on the 16th. At Alabama on the 23rd. That typically doesn't go well. At Kentucky 2 weeks later after an open date. Tennessee's off on Halloween weekend as well. They get Georgia on November the 13th. South Alabama on November the 20th. And then Vanderbilt to finish the season at home on November the 27th.
Let's go real quickly again. Just
All right.
quickly again.
Bowling Green at home.
Okay.
Pittsburgh at home.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Tennessee Tech at home. At Florida. At Missouri. Home versus South Carolina. Home versus Ole Miss. At Alabama. Open date. At Kentucky. Home versus Georgia. Home versus South Alabama. And wrap it up at home against Vanderbilt.
Well, that schedule is pretty favorable.
Yeah, it is.
So you got 5 wins there. If you can beat, and I'm going to put Tennessee Tech, make sure I know it's not Texas Tech. So Pitt is a swing game for them that they must win to kind of get bowl eligible. And then, can they pull an upset over one of the following? Missouri, Ole Miss, Kentucky. Because they're not beating Florida, Alabama, or Georgia. So, yeah, I mean, I think 6 is the ceiling. I mean, I guess if you pull the upset over Missouri, that's not that big. I think 7 could be the ceiling. So I'll give them a little bit of an edge there.
I think Missouri, Ole Miss, and Kentucky are all measurably better than Tennessee this year.
Yeah, but it's a better chance of pulling upset than beating Florida or Georgia or Alabama.
And then here's my other candidate. I don't like their schedule. Here's my other candidate for a disaster. Mississippi State. They open with Louisiana Tech at home. A week later, they get North Carolina State at home. They go to Memphis on September the 18th. Then they get a stretch of 3 games in a row, home against LSU, at Texas A&M, weekend off, and they'll need it. And then they get home versus Alabama October the 16th. Down the stretch, they get Vanderbilt at home. I'm sorry, at Vanderbilt. Home versus Kentucky October the 30th. At Arkansas, November the 6th. At Auburn, November the 13th. Tennessee State at home, and then Ole Miss on Thanksgiving night in Starkville. I'm not crazy about that schedule, Chris. That thing could go south in a hurry before you even play an SEC game. And then, look, when you have a stretch of 3 SEC games to open the slate, and the most winnable one is LSU, that's not the recipe for success out of the gate. And of the 3, LSU, at Texas A&M, and Alabama, and this is no knock on the LSU Tigers, but that's the most winnable game of those 3 for Mississippi State. If you lose to LSU, and then which is very possible, and then you lose at A&M and you get beat at home against Alabama, you're 0-3 out of the gate. You go to Vanderbilt, get a W, you're going to lick your wounds a little bit, but then you get Kentucky at home. That's a toss-up. They got to go to Fayetteville, and it's in November. And by the time you get to Fayetteville in November, things get weird. You got to go to Auburn. That's a loss. And you get Ole Miss at home in the rivalry game. The path to 2-6 in the SEC is right there in front of you.
They'll be a little better this year. I don't know how much. I think Louisiana Tech is a challenging game early, and Mike's teams have sometimes struggled out of the gate. That's a dangerous game. And in NC State's week 2 as well. So that's 2 games that, be careful. They get by those. Memphis, Vandy, Tennessee State. That's your 5 right there. That you get 5. I do think Auburn and Arkansas are winnable games for them. And
Ole Miss is winnable because at the end, that game's a weird game.
And they're the type that could win that game. And depending on the health and where they are, playing Kentucky later, they're good for an upset. They will probably beat one of the teams that you don't think they can beat. And I don't mean Alabama or A&M, but you know what? It could be. They could pull an upset, but then lose a game that they've got no business losing. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. There's going to start to be a little bit of a reckoning there to where the people that are still buying into that Mike Leach is going to, that are thinking that this guy is going to win big now that he's out of it. It's just not going to work here as well as it did as the other 2 because the path is that much more difficult. I think getting to a bowl game again, yes. I think, it's going to be awfully tough consistently to win. Now, they'll pull an upset, and last year is week 1 against LSU, and everybody was just crazy. Then they'll come back to earth. So that's just kind of how it is. So a couple of little things here. Somebody's asking about is South Carolina job a dead-end job? I think South Carolina's a really good job. I think the expectation level of, when are we going to win the East? When are we going to when are we win the SEC? That's unrealistic, but I think you can win there. I think it's a really good job because I think while they would like to go there, the expectations are not the same as they are at Tennessee or Florida at Georgia. You can do a good job there, do well, win. You just can't collapse there. And there's enough where you've got more resources than just than the second tier schools in the East. So you should have a chance to be pretty good there. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this will play out. But
all right. Well, we'll wrap it there. We'll be back with you guys on Friday for another edition of SEC Football and Beyond. Thanks to Blake and Georgia Rebel and Grind and
absolutely
everybody in the thread today. Appreciate all the interaction with us. As always, hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on Friday morning. For Chris, I'm Neil. Take care.